This is Groove Talk with Froggy Style.
So did you just want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. So it's Mike from Woodhawk, just me today.
Okay.
I'm the bass player in the band.
Okay, cool. So you guys are going to be going on tour here soon. And it's called the Strikes Back tour.
Yeah, that's right. Woodhawk Strikes Back.
Yeah. So what kind of made you guys decide on that name, I guess?
I think it's kind of playing into the song that we had on the album that came out this year. There's a song called A New Hope, and of course it's all about Star Wars. And so we've got a lot of success from that. A lot of people notice that one, so we decided to kind of go on that theme.
Cool. So do you kind of take a lot of like elements like that, like kind of that sci-fi elements, and do you apply it to your music?
Yeah, actually, quite a bit of the music we have is kind of sci-fi related. Not necessarily Star Wars. There's only one song that is, but yeah, a lot of it is kind of fantasy, sci-fi stuff.
Okay. So, and you guys put out an album this year, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And this tour is kind of in support of that album?
Yeah, it's kind of continuing that. We did a tour through Western Canada just after the album came out, and so this is, I guess, kind of part of the Strikes Back tours that we're returning to these same places and playing again.
Okay,
so this
cool.
is our first time hitting these places since that last tour.
Yeah, okay. So what is the biggest thing that you have learned from the process of putting out an album then that you could like take and apply to your next release?
I guess just being ready to move ahead quickly with it. This is our first debut album, so we didn't really know a whole lot about what was going on. We've been in other bands, each individually, but this is definitely the biggest release any of us have ever done. So, just pretty much overnight, some of the stuff hitting the internet and streaming on all of the sources, including one of the YouTube channels, and everybody in the world having it and suddenly wanting it immediately. I think that was kind of an eye-opener for us. We spent a lot of time going back and forth to the post office, sending the album out to all corners of the globe. So I think that was probably the most shocking part and most, I don't know, I guess the part that we'd have to prepare for the most for the next one is just being ready to push the album as hard and fast as we can as soon as it comes out.
I'm curious how you guys would kind of describe describe your sound.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting one because we usually get labeled as stoner rock because that's just kind of what works these days. It's kind of the happening genre. But we tend to disagree with that, mostly just because we're not stoners and we don't find that our music really fits that genre all that well. Like it's fuzzy and there's riffs, but that's kind of where the line's drawn. It's not super doomy. There's a lot of melodies and stuff in it that you typically wouldn't find in that type of music. Like it doesn't just kind of drone, so it's more like rock and roll, I guess, but almost has kind of some pop sensibilities, if you want to think of it that way, when it comes to like just the vocal lines or even some of the riffs. We're all Mastodon fans, and there's some songs that have been kind of more inspired by that, and especially some of the ones that nobody's heard yet we're working on.
Okay.
But yeah, maybe as individuals when it comes out for some of that stuff, like for example, the drummer might have more of a Mastodon influence on one song, where the rest of us might be influenced by something else. So
yeah,
that's kind of the hardest thing, trying to not copy somebody that you're listening to at the moment. But
yeah.
I would say definitely we have an influence from them.
Cool. And did your sound kind of come naturally, or was it something that you were kind of aiming for?
I'd say more naturally. It's definitely evolved quite a bit since we started. like there's just the three of us in the band, and the drummer is the only guy who wasn't the original in the band. He's been in for a couple of years now, so we basically treat him as an original member. But before he joined, there was some of these songs, including the EP released from before the album, that weren't actually part of this band. They were kind of a precursor to it while Turner and I were trying to create a new band. So we were just kind of experimenting with different styles of music, and the Riff-Rock thing is kind of what we stuck with. So a lot of the stuff we're writing now is still a bit different than the album that was released.
Okay. And when you guys are writing songs, like kind of how does that work? Do you kind of jam out until you kind of all find your groove, or does like one person take the lead and is like, this is what we're doing? How does the writing process work for you guys?
I'd say it's a bit of both, actually. Usually we'll start with one idea, so let's say a guitar riff, that'll be presented, and we'll just kind of see how we can fit in with that, where it'll go, and then sometimes there's other parts that go with it, and sometimes we write it on the spot. So it's not really directed, but it's also not a full jam usually.
Okay.
And sometimes there's a melody, like a vocal line or something that comes in before we actually all get together, and sometimes we write a whole song without any vocals and then record it and then add that after once we figure out what we want to do with it.
So have you guys received a lot of support from the Calgary music scene?
Yeah, we have. We have a bunch of buddies who are in other bands that we like to play with. Cron Goblin, for example. Those guys have been playing similar type of music for longer than we have, so they've been a huge support for us from our beginning, and now we're both helping to support each other.
Is there one thing in particular that kind of stands out in your mind, like a certain instance maybe where somebody kind of maybe went out of their way to kind of support you guys?
Trying to think of a certain instance. I know that there's some music venues in Calgary that definitely have helped us out quite a bit. The Palomino, for sure.
Yeah.
We've kind of been on their list for a go-to band when it comes to anything like rock and roll or stoner rock for a bit, and we're super grateful for that.
So I know you guys, I think your show is an all-ages show, the one that's coming up in Calgary here, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So how important were all-ages shows to you growing up?
To be honest, I never really went to them before I was 18 years old, so
Okay.
yeah, I can't really say that it was that important to me, because Turner and I both started forming bands when we were kids, but we never really got into the music scene until we were old enough to play in these places. I know Kevin for sure. He's been in music for like probably his entire life, and I'm pretty sure he went to a lot of these all-ages shows, but I don't know too much about that.
What do you feel is the most important thing that we could do as a community to maybe foster a love of music in today's youth?
I think mostly just getting them involved. Like this is the first all-ages show we've ever played, and I don't see that many going on, or at least in this genre.
Yeah.
And so we've had a lot of requests for it, mostly for parents who want to bring their kids, and the kids who know all the words to our songs, which is kind of shocking. But
yeah,
I think also just allowing kids who are forming bands to be able to perform as well.
Yeah, definitely. So what goes into planning a tour like this?
I guess probably the biggest thing is lining up dates for venues and seeing where and when we can go. So this upcoming tour is all weekends, just because all three of us work during the week, and so we tried to squeeze this in. The previous tour was 2 weeks of nonstop shows, basically, a show every day. So basically comes down to looking at a map and seeing how far we can get one day to the next to play shows. So we covered 3 provinces in 3 days, or I guess actually 4 provinces on the last tour, so in 4 days. So it's kind of a challenge to make sure that everything lines up. And of course, there's always issues that arise, mechanical issues for vehicles always, but you pretty much just have to bank on those things not happening when it comes to those types of tours.
Yeah. So is there anything that you're like really looking forward to about this upcoming tour? Like maybe a place in particular you're really looking forward to play?
I don't know about a single one. Pretty much excited about all of these shows because we've been there a couple times, made some good friends in all these places, and I'm really excited to get back and see all these people and play with other bands and these fans again.
Cool. Was it? Did you pick the bands who you'll be playing alongside in the other cities and stuff? Or?
Some of them, yes. Some of them are put together by the promoters or the venues, and some of them are just, we call up friends in other bands in other cities and say, hey, we want to play a show. Can you recommend anyone?
So is there anything from your last tour that you have learned that you're going to kind of carry over and apply to this tour?
Good question. I think mostly just being prepared for all the shows as well as prepared for traveling between them. We're usually pretty well run for getting things moving. So, for example, getting to the venue on time, unloading all our stuff, getting everything set up, including our merch and stuff. We don't hire anyone to do our merch for us usually, so we kind of have to make sure we're playing all of the roles when it comes to touring. So we're our own tour manager and we're our own merch people and stuff. So just making sure that we've got all of the boxes checked before we move on to the next show.
I know that your Calgary show, at least, it's a very kind of interesting event that's taking place. There's the whole pinball thing that's going along with the whole event there. I guess kind of what are your thoughts on that?
I'm super curious to find out more about it. To be honest, I don't know a whole lot about the event yet. We're still kind of working out the details, but
yeah,
it's intriguing. I'm curious to see like what kind of crowd that would bring and like what kind of things are going on at this event. It sounds like it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
I guess it depends how far back in time.
Well, I mean, like, I guess at the start of your music career, maybe, like, I guess to keep it relevant.
Okay. I'm not sure. I feel like I haven't learned that one pivotal thing I need to know yet. I think everything I've done so far has been a ton of fun, and there's no real regrets from it. So I'm not sure if there's really one piece of advice that I would give to have a better outcome at this point.
Okay. For the person maybe who is kind of looking to get involved in the music scene, and maybe they don't have a lot of friends who are interested in the music scene the way they are, what advice would you give to that person to like get them out to a show?
I guess kind of figure out what kind of shows you want to go to. Like if you're super into metal or if you're into more indie stuff or if you're into hip hop or whatever, find what you're excited about and go to those shows and go to the local bands, ask them lots of questions. Like we don't mind answering questions for people who are starting out, and usually you get some good advice. I know we've grown a lot just by asking other bands that we were playing shows with some questions about things that we don't know about, and they're clearly doing a good job at it.
Just curious, is there any bands in particular in Calgary that you are like really digging right now?
There's some friends bands that I'm pretty into. Denim Machine is one of them. They're kind of new-ish, I guess. They're similar music style. We've been playing a few shows with them.
Okay.
Yeah, Cron Goblin, like I mentioned, we're super good buddies with them. Oh, geez, I hope I don't leave anyone out. I'm I'm trying to think of who else on the spot.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm sure they'll forgive you.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the questions I have for you. So thank you very much for calling and taking the time out of your day.
Yeah, thanks for having me.